This morning we're going to do something a little bit different in that I'm going to start out and talk about career development, and then we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion where each of us are going to kind of talk through our leadership journeys, leadership learnings. It's just sort of a mix of different things. But we want to open it up also to questions from you. This is an opportunity for you to ask us really anything around leadership, our experiences, and anything that you're really thinking about. So kind of think about what questions you may have for us. We'll start out, but then we'll open it up for questions from you. So I'm going to start out and talk a bit about career development. And we talked this week, you heard us talk about coaching and how coaching is a really good technique to help people work through any kind of challenges they may be having. What we haven't talked about yet, and we wanted to get into, is around mentorship and sponsorship, and also talk about, well, what are the differences among those, including coaching, and when might you think one of those may be helpful in your career development? So there's a lot of information that having a mentor can help with your career. And so I put together this table to kind of compare and contrast mentorship, sponsorship, and coaching, and when to be thinking about that. And at the end of the slides, there's a reference there as well that provides some additional information. So what I'm going to do is just go down each column and talk about them in general. And then if you have any questions or comments, we welcome those as well. So we'll start with mentorship. And as I said, there's been a lot of data that says that if you have a mentor helping you with your career, then it helps you with advancement. And so what is mentorship? It's actually a relationship between an experienced person, who would be the mentor, and then a less experienced or junior person, perhaps, who would be the mentee. And we talk about it as a relationship because it's generally something that's over time. And really the purpose of having this relationship is to be able to gain knowledge, the mentee, from the mentor who has experience, who's pretty much gone through some of the challenges that the mentee has been going through, and can really guide you, give you suggestions and thoughts about what would perhaps be a next step or something for you to do to advance your career. The focus really is on both professional and personal growth. It's sort of like the whole person that people focus on. And again, similar to how you've heard us talk about coaching, there really are different kinds of mentors. And you don't necessarily just want to have one mentor. It really depends on what your focus is in your career and what you're doing. And so there are mentors who are sort of your overall mentor that can help you with your career, that can give you advice along the way. Now, if you have a career in which you're focusing on research, people may also have a research mentor to help them with different aspects of research and perhaps help them with writing grants or writing papers, some of the academic things that one may be doing. And so it's often thought that more than one mentor may be applicable and important for people to think about, depending on what you're trying to accomplish in your career. So one mentor who is thinking sort of overall for you and advancing in your career may not have the experience that someone who is doing research would have. So you want to tap into people who have a certain expertise in the area of the work that you're doing. Oftentimes we think of it as a one-on-one relationship, but you also can have some peer mentoring. So we talked about peer coaching. Peer mentoring can be another thing to think about. And so there was a time when I was in a research lab and learning how to do basic science research. And there was another person in the lab who was a physician who was more senior and had been there for some period of time. She sort of informally mentored me. And I don't know I really realized that at the time that she was doing that, but she had the experience and she was kind of helping me to learn how to navigate being in the lab and navigate doing basic science research. So the other point is that I don't know I've ever, in my situation, has said, will you be my mentor? It's something that you can do because it clarifies that that person is going to be your mentor, but also there's the way of just kind of seeing, do you work well together? Do you find that it's helpful to have discussions with people? So you can certainly have a mentor who is formally established as a mentor, but there are also sort of these informal relationships that happen that you can reach out to somebody and they can mentor you as well. So the peer mentor, the point of that is that this was a peer in the lab with me who was mentoring me along, as well as the people who were more senior and were helping me to understand the research process. Now, a mentor can also be a sponsor. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about sponsorship. And the sponsorship really is someone who has the power and influence to identify opportunities for a junior person. Also can speak about you in meetings when you're not necessarily there. They're thinking about you and your career and want to help advance that career. And so the sponsor is often thinking about career opportunities for another person. Now, the sponsor has got to believe in you because they're kind of putting themselves out there to say this person's really great, I really want you to be thinking about them as opportunities arise. So you kind of have to have a relationship with somebody, most likely before they would sponsor you. And I don't know I've ever asked somebody to sponsor me, but it happens as they get to know you sort of naturally. Again, I'm not trying to say don't ask somebody to be your mentor. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying don't ask somebody to be your sponsor. I guess I'm saying there are several ways in which this can happen. And so what a sponsor would do would recommend you to serve perhaps on a national committee, give panel presentations or research types of presentations. That sponsor may be, someone may reach out to that sponsor to say, hey, will you come and talk at this national meeting? And the sponsor may say, I have another commitment, but I have somebody who's terrific who could do that really well. And so that's something that a sponsor would do. They would sort of defer it and perhaps have someone else do something like that. The sponsorship is sort of it can be short-term or long-term, but basically they're advocating for you, not necessarily with you being present. You may not be there, and oftentimes that happens. They're advocating for you. You may not know they're doing that, but it has happened where they could advocate for you in a meeting that you're not at, and then the sponsor will reach out to you and say, hey, I suggested that you could work on this panel or you could give this presentation instead of me. So that's different, having a sponsor than a mentor, but a mentor can also be a sponsor. The coaching, as you heard about, really is a process to support around a specific challenge or a specific issue. So when I think of a mentor, they're mentoring you in your career as sort of general career advancement. Whereas a coach, and you did this with peer coaching, the coach is really helping you with a specific challenge. And so they do that, as you know, by asking probing questions. They help clarify issues for you. It's often a single issue that perhaps someone would be working on. And there are different types of coaching experiences. And so there often can be short term. So you will find that when someone is advancing in their career and into a new role, perhaps you would get a coach to help you in that new role. One of the things that people talk about is that what got you success in this position will not necessarily help you with your next role. That you have to be thinking about different ways to address what you're being asked to do at this point, and a coach can help you. Now, there had been this thinking that you get a coach when there's a problem. And it doesn't have to be that you get a coach when you have a problem. Despite the fact that they will help you on a single issue, they can help you thinking about your career and what you need to be doing next. So that sounds a little bit confusing, but there are times in which people will advance in their role and you'll have a coach to help you understand what does that new role require of you. And so that's where there's a little bit of a difference. There are various types of coaches. I can tell you, there's like health coaches, there's career coaches, there's, all sorts of coaches. And there's all sorts of skill levels in people who can be a coach for you. And so you want to sort of be clear on what that is as you're thinking about your career. And maybe having the peer coaching is just going to be perfect for you because the peer is helping you to identify some of the challenges and figure out issues that may be coming up because they have other ideas and experiences, but then there are also professionally trained coaches that can help you as well. So we've done the peer coaching. Self-coaching is really kind of asking yourself questions related to what you're trying to achieve. And so self-coaching is another way in which you can think about things. So 3 different kind of approaches. The mentorship is very clear. Having a mentor is really important. I would suggest if you don't have one, think about who could be a mentor for you. Sometimes mentors are assigned to people. Sometimes that works very well. Sometimes it's just getting to know somebody and it's sort of an informal mentorship relationship. But as I said, you often want to have more than one mentor, and having a mentor with a certain expertise may be particularly helpful. So let me stop there and see if you have questions, want some clarification on any of those. Yes? Yeah, I think that it happens. You don't necessarily know how often or how regular it is, but I think that where we are, people are always thinking about others' careers, and when people are asked to do certain things, they want to be thinking, well, should I be doing that? Do I need to do that? Or is there someone else who could be doing that? So it's hard to know how often that happens, because I think you hear about it on an individual basis, that somebody was sort of chosen to do something, but it's happening around us. Yeah.
Can pharmaceutical company be a sponsor, or does it count?
A pharmaceutical company. So that's when I think of a pharmaceutical company sponsoring, I think of them sponsoring from a financial support perspective. Is that what you're thinking, or what do you tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking?
For me, for example, for some researching or doing lectures about the theme of researching. So is it sponsorship or not?
Is it sponsorship when a pharma company asks you to do research?
Yeah, and pay for me for presentation, for example, about the medical drugs.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of sponsorship. In my eyes, that's a sponsorship that they're looking for help from you, whereas another type of sponsorship is they're thinking about how to help you. So from the pharma perspective, they're like, how can I get someone who's got expertise to talk about my drug or whatever I'm doing? So it's just a different type of sponsorship. Yes.
Could you repeat that with the microphone, please?
You want the mic there? Yeah, thanks.
At times, there are challenges which arise from relationship between mentor and mentee, and also with the coach. Probably after a long time, because there's no clear boundary between how you relate with the mentor and mentee, we may have relationship challenges and problems. Maybe mentor will ask you to do something which maybe is not something you want to do, and at times relationship, maybe he's too senior and junior, and although there may not be, cultures are different. In some places there may not be an issue between a male or female mentor and male or female mentee. I don't know what is your experience and how do you resolve issues between relationship between mentor and mentee?
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. Are you thinking sort of like your boss as your mentor, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So that doesn't sound like an ideal mentorship relationship to me if there are issues between the mentor and the mentee. So I would question whether or not that's really the relationship that you want to have. Because if there's tension or challenges between the mentor and the mentee, then that's not really helping you advance your career. So the whole goal is to have somebody that you work well with, who's thinking about you and your career and how to advance it. So if there's tension there, it may be time to move on to be thinking about another mentor. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's ideal. Sounds like that's an experience that you've had.
Yeah, because I have a mentor. He has been mentoring me since medical school undergraduate for maybe 10, 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And he has been pushing me to move forward. We have been attending meetings, conferences together. We have been writing papers together. But suddenly he moved to another hospital as a director of a new hospital. And he invited me to go and set up radiology department.
To
for
set
him.
up
a new department for him in a new hospital. But personally, I don't like to go. I don't like the place, but he feels I have the capacity to establish the system for him. So I say no. I'm not going there because XYZ, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
But since that time, the relationship became somehow.
Yeah.
So I have been wondering maybe have I done something wrong, or what should I have done?
Well, it sounds to me like your gut sense was that wasn't the right thing to do and it wasn't really going to help you. I mean, I think you can always ask questions. That's sort of a fallback thing. And so why does he want you to go and do that? How is it helping you in your career? Because that's the whole thing about a mentorship relationship. They should be helping you in your career. And maybe there was something that he saw that would be helpful for you to do, but I don't think that it necessarily requires you to do exactly what they're asking you to do. So from what you've said, it sounds like that was the right thing. If you went and did it anyway, I think it probably wouldn't have naturally felt very good to you, and you probably wouldn't have done as well as you might have wanted to.
Thank you very much.
Other questions, comments, differences among these?
Well, the mentorship, as you mentioned, could possibly be that the mentor was investing sort of his time and expertise in your development, that he starts to want something in exchange.
Yeah.
I mean, he thought he's going to win your loyalty in order to, like, you help him establish new thing, new department, new hospital, and then you suddenly discover that this is not entirely what you want from
Yeah.
life. So
Yeah.
that's where your ways usually separate.
Yeah.
Not without tension, I presume.
Yeah, no, it sounds like there was tension there. I mean, there is, the thought that it should be a relationship back and forth and that it's not all about the mentee, but it has to work in a way that is advantageous for both people. and not just one. Other situations? How many people would say they have a mentor just by raising your hand? So a good number. Yeah? Good. And raise your hand if it's a formal mentor relationship or more of an informal. So formal mentorship? Yeah, okay. Do your programs or your hospital require that or ask that you do that, or it's more of a natural thing that happens? Yeah?
I've asked for it.
You've asked for it, great.
Myself,
Yeah.
because I felt I need someone to guide me.
Yeah,
So I kind of thought in my mind, and I went and picked one up. No,
yeah,
so I've asked.
that's great.
Otherwise, I wouldn't get anyone.
Yeah.
There's no, it's not something that it works in a system.
And are you glad that you did that?
Yes, and I think it's very important for everyone working in a healthcare system.
Yeah.
Also, even professors should have a mentor.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply, in my eyes, it doesn't apply just for the junior doctors.
That's right.
It applies to everyone to have someone.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think what we have found when we've looked at programs back at CHOP is that junior people get mentors, but as you advance in your career, many of the senior people don't necessarily have formal mentoring relationships, and so you have to really seek those out. So it often does happen early on in your career, but we're seeing that there are some gaps as well, that more senior people don't necessarily have mentors, and you really have to seek them out. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Are formal mentorship programs mentoring paid by hospital? Is it like a paid job?
No, no. It's really sort of your, helping people out. It's sort of your giving back, your sort of citizenship, as we would say. Yeah.
Maybe just a comment, I was thinking maybe during official PhD studies, you have a PhD supervisor, which usually should be in a way, in the research area, your mentor for that research area.
Yeah. And we,
More official.
yeah, we have that as well, sort of around research specifically, because people are learning most of the time how to do research early on, and so they will have that as well. But hopefully they also have a career mentor, not just the research mentor. But because it's not necessarily paid, some people are like, well, I don't have the time to do this, but the reality is that many people like to do it and would do it sort of as giving back to junior people to help them out. Yeah, Evan.
And one thing to talk about, certainly with these mentorship, sponsorship, coaching, it really should be an act of giving primarily. And do people know where the word mentor comes from? Does anyone remember? Anyone of Greek mythology? Yeah, so Mentor was put in charge of Odysseus' son Telemachus, and then Athena actually comes and appears as mentor at the palace. And so the idea of if you think about these relationships, can a parent tell a child to do something the child doesn't like if it's in the child's best interests? Maybe, but there should be a relationship, right, obviously, around what's best for the child. So it's, to me, I always like to sort of think about that in terms of that, but that wasn't the major reason I was going to say something, was that it should come from a place of giving. But, at Penn, for example, we can get points in our academic dossier, right, for mentoring and advising activities. And so it's a no financial cost way to help recognize the work people do. So if you write down, you say, I was the mentor, I was part of a faculty advising group or something like that, for our university promotions and academics, we can write down that we spent time on that. And so if you have mechanisms like that, it can be a way to sort of honor the work that hopefully people are doing because they want to do it.
Right.
And when you can't pay them for doing it.
Yeah, it's another way of sort of getting, the support for doing that. Yeah.
Building on what Evan said, I find that the most successful ingredient to a mentorship or sponsorship relationship is do you just organically like
Yeah.
the person? Do you like each other? So in my first firm, I had an assigned mentor. So every partner was required to be a mentor, and that relationship I had with that mentor was very professional, and it was almost like the mentor was required to take an hour out of her month to meet with me, and then she was done with her responsibility and she went back to work. My second mentor relationship came organically. I found someone within my organization that I got along with. We joked with each other all the time, and I was very comfortable with that person. So I asked him to become a mentor. We liked each other, and through that affinity, he just went above and beyond because he likes the person, right? And we can all relate to that. If you like someone, you're gonna go above and beyond. So I really think to the extent you can pick and choose who you mentor, or who becomes your mentor, that likability is a really important part.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's sort of similar to when there's tension there, that doesn't work so well. It's really much better if you have a relationship that's a positive relationship with the other person. Yeah. All right, why don't we transition to, faculty want to come up front? We'll transition to do some questions. I'll start out with some questions, and then hopefully you all have some questions that you want to ask us as well. Any other comments about mentorship that you guys have? I think you kind of did provide some guidance there, but nothing else to say. Okay, all right, so I wanted to ask Scott to just talk briefly a bit around career development. In general, everybody needs to have some plan or goal around your career development, and this is an expertise, I would say, that Scott has. And so, Scott, I'll pass it to you to just make some comments about that.
Sure. So really quickly, CHOP is, we're really fortunate to have the organization invest in career development opportunities. So my team is part of that investment. So we do leadership, professional, and career development work. And a lot of the career development work we have done has expanded organically just based on demand and interest in those services. So if you build it, all right, this is I'm going movie, Evan and I have been trading movie quotes this week. If you build it, they will come. So if you start to offer this and word gets out, people will come to you. And so we just started with like CV or resume writing, how to make a more effective presentation of your skills and yourself, and how to interview a little more effectively, and to put yourself in the best light. What types of questions might you find? All the way up to now people are asking for career counseling, career coaching. And so I'll share a couple of those, the things that we often offer when we do the career counseling, career coaching work. First, the way we look at careers isn't necessarily a linear thing. Career isn't necessarily like a ladder. I just climb, boop, boop, and it's predefined and I'm gonna follow that. We've embraced the idea of lattice, career lattice. You could go up, over, up again, over, right? Like it could be your path may be, every one of your paths may end up looking different depending upon the opportunities that are available for you, where you want to go, what you enjoy doing, what you want to embrace. And so we ask people to be a little more open-minded about what might be next for them from a career perspective. And to learn about those opportunities. How do I find out more about what might be available to me? Or to really look inside about what interests you, what are you passionate about, what do you really like to do? And then find someone who does that. What do you like to do? Go find someone who does that. Go take them for coffee and talk with them about their work. Sounds intimidating? Does that sound intimidating to some of you, to go find somebody and ask them to go to coffee? Here's the cool thing about that. People's favorite topic to talk about is themselves. Yeah. So you tell someone, I want to take you to coffee, and you tell me about you, you're very likely to get a yes, because then really you're just asking somebody to share their story. And then you just take an interest and listen for the things that make you happy. And so if you do a number of those things, you start to learn about what else might be available for you and where else you might want to go. There's extensions of that. If you want to take that even farther, you could ask someone to, can I go watch you? Or maybe you could tour me around your space for a couple of hours and I can really see what goes on there and get a reality check on if this is something I'm really interested in doing. So those sorts of informal interviews, those types of things might also end up in one of these relationships if you're really lucky, right? If you meet a lot of people. And meeting lots of people in that way also is a way to build your relationship and build a network. Good networks can lead to sponsorship. All of those types of things can start to happen in that way.
Terrific. That's really helpful, and really some really important comments there. I think one thing that I have found is people often think that I'm so busy that I don't have time, and they'll send me an email, just, if you have time, can I get together with you? I would say many people love to talk about themselves. Not that that's my goal, but my goal would be to help somebody. And so, even when I am, I guess at presentations, when people come up to me, I'm so happy that they do. So I guess what I'm trying to say is people want to give back, people want to share their experiences. They've been in, positions of junior faculty or junior physicians, and most people really want to give back. And so I would encourage you, and this is what I've done with my kids, go up and talk to somebody and just, learn from them as much as you possibly can. So just want to encourage that. The other thing is about the resources. We have found that our physicians don't always know all the resources that we have at the institution. It was something that came out like 3 months ago. And it was so disappointing for me to hear that people didn't know. And so there may be resources there at your institution that you just aren't aware of. So I would encourage you to do that. And also to build on your skills. I mean, everybody here is here to learn more and to get better. Keep doing that, because I always tell people, invest in yourself is probably one of the best investments that you can make. So really, we all applaud you for being here and working on your skills. And then the last thing, you just brought up so many different things that touched in my brain here, is that it's helpful, I think, to also do lateral moves. And so there was a time in which I had gone to a number of institutions and worked, and at one point was a vice president in an institution. And when I went to another institution, I was asked to be a director. And I didn't really like that. I kind of thought, I was a vice president somewhere else. Why am I going to be a director? But lateral moves can be really quite helpful in the sense of you learn different things, you learn different experiences, and I know other people have done this as well. So don't necessarily not take a position because it's not exactly where you were at a level in another institution. And what I found is, if it's right, you move up very quickly anyway. So lateral moves are also very helpful because you learn in a different environment. All right, so we kind of want to move on to talk a little bit about leadership journeys. And so Evan, I'll turn it over to you to talk a bit about your journey and sort of when did you know that you were a leader?
So there's a story about sort of being a leader that I want to share. I think it's sort of in the larger arc of my career interest. So it was probably about 20 years ago. I'll tell the story, then I'll sort of explain where this fell in the arc. So it was probably about 20 years ago this week or next week or something like that. I was a brand new second-year resident on a specialty rotation. We had just started a sort of system where second-year residents were considered senior residents, and they were going to be paired with third-year residents. So pediatric residency is 3 years, and historically it had been senior residents were the third-year residents. And I walked in day one, and the senior resident was an MD PhD student who had done sort of an alternate pathway in residency and was sort of already very deeply involved in the lab. And essentially right after rounds ended, he said to me, I plan on spending the next several weeks in the lab, so you can run rounds. And I mean, the week before I was an intern, and now I had, brand new interns who had the week before had been medical students. And so I said, okay, so here I was sort of in that ad hoc role of being a leader on rounds for the residents with the specialty rotation. And that would be fine, but there was a lot of controversy on the floor. The way that the specialty wanted rounds to work was to pull the interns to a conference room a significant distance away from the inpatient floor to essentially watch the specialists discuss, debate, maybe even argue about patient care. And the residents felt like this wasn't a productive use of their time, the interns. They had other responsibilities and other patients to take care of. And there was a lot of tension because nobody was willing to speak truth to power. The specialist on service and the division chief had very strong views, was a little bit more old-fashioned, maybe a little bit more like some of the leaders that we've discussed this week as more challenging. And so here I was in this position of, there were challenges with this. And I had a good relationship from the prior year, and I had taken negotiations, and I sort of understood some of these dynamics. So I probably put on, looking back, I probably put on a little bit of an owl type of thing. I collected information very quickly about why this wasn't working, proposed an alternative, went to the division chief / attending, and I said, this isn't working, and here are some alternatives. And it was interesting because it was one of the first times, but a recurrent theme was that someone else who's in a leadership role who has a sort of history of being intimidating said, I've never heard that before. Nobody's raised this concern to me. And, as much as he, I think, would have liked us to continue to trek across campus and join this type of thing, he was reasonable about understanding that there had to be something different about that. And we were able to reach a compromise to change how rounds worked in the morning, I think, what the engagement of the residents was and so on. And it was really helpful, obviously, for that rotation and going forward. And for me, it was certainly a good reinforcement of the idea that you can respectfully challenge other leaders, and that, in that way, acting as a leader for your own, sort of peers, as it were, within the residency program. The last thing I'll say about this is that when I started medical school, I was interested in physician leadership, and so I went to University of Pennsylvania in part because there was the opportunity to do an MBA with medical school. So I knew early on I was interested in this combination of physician leadership and sought out educational opportunities in that way. And each one of those things sort of builds on themselves. And so I took negotiations in business school, which was very helpful to then negotiating with a division chief about why his version of rounds wasn't necessarily the most effective way, while also maintaining my ability to have a good relationship with him for that rotation, and for the remainder of residency. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, great story there for sure. We all can imagine that. But the change management part of it was sounding as though that was a bit difficult for people to get different ways of having rounds go, and for you to initiate that change was really important. Brendan, I want to turn it over to you to hear a bit more about your thoughts of leadership, and perhaps when you knew you were a leader or enjoyed being a leader.
Yeah, thanks, Trish. So I'll actually start this topic by talking about the biggest career mistake I ever made. So the biggest mistake I ever made was going down a route that people told me I should be going down. So when I was in college, high school, a lot of people around me thought, you'd be a really good lawyer. And I kind of just followed that trajectory. I did what people said would be good for me. And so I went to law school. I practiced law for a year, and I was totally miserable. I didn't like it. I wasn't energized by it. I had no passion. Eventually I realized this was not going to be a sustainable path for me. So I pivoted, and I went into management consulting on the business and strategy side of things, and that was really great for me. But I realized that I really, to be truly kind of invested and driven and passionate about what I did, I wanted to work for a mission-based organization. And so I was able to take what I enjoyed about the application of strategy in business and applied it to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, an organization that really meant a lot to me as someone who had 20 surgeries at CHOP. And it was only until I started doing something that I was really passionate about that I could, at least for me, feel like I was equipped to become a leader. Because we talked a lot about management and leadership, and remember that slide that said management is doing and leadership is being? Well, I think it's kind of hard to be a leader if you're not in something that is part of your being. It can be done. It absolutely can be done. But for me, it was much more helpful to really be passionate about what I was doing, to truly be a leader, because leadership really is with you all of the time, and if you're passionate about it, I think it's just that much easier to lead. So I think how that manifested was, like, we all of us in this room found ourselves in this situation. COVID hit, a heck of a lot going on. We were all asked to do so much. And when COVID hit, it just so happened to correspond with a time where my old boss had left and my new boss went on maternity leave. So I was kind of left, even though I was fairly junior, being like the de facto strategy leader for like a month at CHOP when COVID hit. So there was tremendous uncertainty, a lot going on. So I saw my hours go from 45 hours to a crazy amount of hours. And like all of you, there was a lot going on personally, right? There was just so much stress and challenge going on. And I don't know if I could have stepped into that role and lead without having had that passion and that interest in what I was doing. Like, it would have been hard for me to see myself being asked to do everything I was asked to do at CHOP when I was at the law firm, where I just didn't want to be there. So I think the takeaway is leadership can be empowered and enabled if you're really following, what it is you want to do and what drives you.
Yeah, and how important passion is for what you do. I think I've heard where at least 20% of your job should be what you love to do, and if it's more than that, that's even better. But try and carve out at least 20% of your job or more with something that you really do enjoy doing, because that passion really drives you, as you were saying, Brendan. Yeah, thanks. Scott, how about you? Any thoughts of a bit around when you knew you were a leader, and what were some of the factors associated with that?
Yeah, thanks, Trish. So mine, I think I have a little bit more thematic.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's not a parable, I guess. All right, so often what has happened for me is I'm in a position where leadership chooses me. Do you all have experiences like that? And it happened enough times where the real learning for me was to understand why leadership was choosing me. So the first few times that happened, going all the way back to I played sports as a kid and then a team captain, right? I became team captain. And so often you are chosen because people are following you, and that makes you get put into a leadership role because you seem to have gathered some followers. And there's a couple of ways to move from that position where you have followers, you are made a leader. And what the risk at that point is that I behave differently after getting a formal leadership role. Like, oh, now I can really tell everyone what to do and how this should be done. I don't have to work with this influence stuff anymore. Now I can act, and that breaks the reason why you were chosen as the leader in the first instance. It took me years to figure that out, where now I'm in the leadership role and I can tell everybody what to do because now they've recognized that I know better than everyone else, and it took a while for that. So the real reason you've become a leader is because you can influence people and you're not telling them what to do. And so that's the thing to keep embracing, is to choose to become a leader because you can use your influence on a greater scale and keep using your influence in that way. This is why we do that. Leadership is about influence and not about telling, right? And so for me, it is also about passion in work. So I've been in leadership roles for 25 years, a long time, different kinds of leadership roles. And it took me a startlingly long amount of time to figure out that it's about influence and not the other thing. And so the last part of this that I'll talk about is my move to CHOP, and that I was a leadership role. I was in a director role in a previous organization, and the work that brings me joy, which I hope you see, is the standing up here and talking to you all, part of the job. And in this director level role, it was diminishingly small opportunities to do all of that. And I found that my main competency was attending conference calls. Like, that was my job, to attend a lot of conference calls. And for me, that's just torture. That was not how I wanted to spend my life. And then this opportunity at CHOP came, which was not a leadership role. It was a role doing leadership learning, so doing more of the stand in front of the group and talk to people. So I took that. Like, I don't career lattice, right? I just went sideways, down and sideways, because it immersed me in the place where I was doing the thing that I love the most. And then leadership found me again. Fortunately, at that point, I had learned why leadership might find me, and I took the role with the right mindset, with the choice that I want to help other people be really good at this thing that they too are passionate about, and to help them be the best version of that they can be, while helping all of the other people in this wonderful organization be the best that they can be, because that's the privileged space that we're in, and offering learning to folks who can then be better at the work that they do, which trickles all the way down to all of the children that we serve.
There you go. Another thing about, you have to be passionate about the work that you do, and that making these lateral moves, or even, maybe a little bit lower than where you were, that doesn't matter as much as it does to really follow your passions and what's really important to you. I do want to, we've got another 10 minutes. I just want to make sure we open it up to you all as far as if you have questions. Yep, you do? Okay. Here, I'll go. Thanks.
I've been hearing, and the slide says, when did leadership started for you? So leadership, everybody can be a leader, or not everybody can be a leader. You're born a leader, or leadership chooses you. So that's my question.
Okay, are you born a leader, or does leadership choose you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's not for everybody.
You got to want to do it, that's for sure. You guys, Scott?
Me?
Yeah.
You're the expert.
Okay. My perspective is that born leader thing is mythology. I don't know that everyone should be a leader. I think it's about the right mindset, the right place. Leadership is not about position, power, authority, telling people what to do. Leadership is about influence. And so when I say choose to be a leader, what I mean by that is choose to act in the best interests of the people who you lead. It is a privilege to lead them. They are looking to you to make the best decision, the right decision for the moment, for them, the team, your clients, your patients. And so to make that choice, is that, I don't know, is that something from inside? I think you can learn how to do that. That's the whole point of this week, is to offer the opportunity to shift your mindset in the direction that offers you an opportunity to choose leadership in a way that helps you grow other people. Like, that's That's the mindset, is I need to grow people and make the right decisions for them and encourage growth. That's what I would say.
I would agree with Scott. I think about some of this in the way of sort of like bedside manner, like being doctors who have this incredible bedside manner. And so in the United States, most medical schools have something called doctoring, which is essentially teaching medical students how to have better bedside manner. And some people are just better at it than others. And so, in a sense, can anybody, quote unquote, study hard enough to become a doctor? Yes. Then the question is, how much energy does it take to have excellent bedside manner, to be an excellent researcher? And it's the flexing in these different directions. And so, can anyone be a leader? Probably. Can they be a great leader? That may then be the question. I think that then connects to what Scott said, which is that some people may just have more natural dispositions to also have the open-mindedness to put on a learning mindset and say, as good as I might be, as leadership chooses me by circumstance, to then have the insight to understand why it chose you, so to speak, and then develop those skills and recognize where those are opportunities to get better. And that's why I come back to this same thing as sort of bedside manner. We can teach doctoring to some students, but at the end of the day, some medical students are better off doing doctoring stuff that doesn't have as much patient contact as others. And some people you recognize and you say, you're amazing, like you really, right? Like that is an amazing skill set for interfacing with patients and really develop that more, right? Don't just stop, but keep developing that. And I think the same can be true of leadership.
Yeah, and to build on that, as we talked about earlier this week, is the importance of emotional intelligence. And so as Evan is saying, you have to have a certain amount of intelligence to be a physician or to do work that people do, but it's when you have that emotional intelligence that you're able to go above and beyond, and so how important that really is. There, question back here, and then we'll go to you, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Professor Feynman is being credited for saying you either succeed or you learn. So I would like to ask you, what were your biggest lessons learned from your biggest leadership failures?
How much time do we have?
No. I think I don't have to necessarily think about the biggest failures or set of them or where things didn't go well. I think the recurrent lesson is to listen more. And so that's either from the people who I know or to seek out more opinions. And, oftentimes there's the pressure of we have to come to an answer. And there's a saying, like go slow to go fast. And knowing when that's the case and say, okay, well, we've already, do we have the time to meet with another group of people? Do we have the time to get another set of perspectives? And when things haven't gone well, where we've really had a change, it's, the general lesson in that is that I didn't slow down enough to get more information.
Yeah, and another thing that people say is when you fall down, you learn. It's when you don't get back up that there's the issue, that you really don't learn. So we learn from our failures, but when that failure happens, make sure you get right back up and you go again. It's really important to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. It's possible what two great leaders work together on one department, or just one leader for one department, or it depends?
So is the question asking that,
Can they just two great leaders work on one department?
as in that two great leaders might collide with each other?
Or it's just
Or,
always...
I think that if people really have good leadership skills, it should be synergistic or just better, right? I mean, like if there are two leaders and the product of them working together is things not going well, then they're probably not two great leaders. I think if you really bring two great leaders together, not just leaders, two great leaders together, they will work together in a way that together they're better than if it was just one. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott to answer this more. I think the goal of creating investing in leadership is that we want more great leaders, even if that means that they're all in the same places. That's expansive, right? That's making the pie bigger. There's a negotiation strategy, right, which is that like it's better off having two great negotiators with each other. Like you're not as opposed to like, oh, if I'm the great negotiator and you're not a good negotiator, then I can take advantage of you. No, like we're better off if everybody's great negotiators. We're going to do better. We're going to grow the pie. And I would say the same thing of leadership. We can grow the pie by having more great leaders. It's not a competition. It's a collaboration.
So I can actually put those two together. I think so. Some of the things that I failed with most as a leader are the reasons that this might happen, where you have conflict. So when you make it about yourself as a leader, about my success, or when I try and force or tell or demand from the team, which is a risk because the people you manage in spaces where the people you manage do the same work that you do, that you feel like you are the expert at, there's a risk of you trying to tell them what to do and how to do it and micromanage. And that will backfire sooner or later, will backfire. And those things have happened to me and have led to, like a lot of the stuff we talked about this week are real life learnings from us and from me in particular about how not to show up as a leader. And when you have two leaders working together who are trying to make it about themselves or who have very specific ideas about how things get done, you might end up with conflict. And instead, we're trying to do influence. We influence each other as partner leaders. We influence the team and let the how that happens, as long as it's anywhere close to okay, let that happen. And then the other thing about being partner leaders is to, like, all of the appreciation credit goes to the team, right? It's not about me. Like that has to be, choosing to be a leader is saying it's not about me at all. Yes, I'm in a spotlight. I get all the things we said earlier. I'm in a spotlight. They're analyzing that's fine. And in essence, how I show up is about me and everything else is not. Everything is about the team, the benefit of the team and helping the team be the best version of themselves. And as partner leaders, right, we have to put the team first before whatever little, even if we have personal squabbles, that has to go away because the success of the team has to come first.
It's not about the ego.
Correct.
I think we have time for one brief question. Sorry. 9 o'clock.
It's a great discussion. I would like to ask each of you, how do you manage work-life balance? Because we may be afraid to step in a higher position, in a responsibility, while thinking on our own families. So I would like to know, how do you manage, how do you do, what do you recommend? Thank you.
It's not so brief, right?
Yeah. Two things come to mind for me. So there's like the very practical part of work-life balance, which is literally how do you make sure you're not working too many hours. And then there's the psychological part of work-life balance, which is how do I just not be stressed all the time. On the psychological part, it took me a while to figure out what this thing was, but I knew I needed a thing that would totally get my mind off of work. And so for me, when I was in high school, I was a rower. And then I stopped rowing for a long time. And then last year, I started rowing again. And we spend all of our life on land. And there's something about just, for me, being on the water, literally there's that physical transition from all the stressful things happen on land, and now I'm on the water. And it's physical, and it's a workout. And for me, that totally clears my mind. So I, without fail, I do it every Saturday morning, which is a nice way to end the week and go into the weekend. But sometimes I just really feel like I need to go out, so I might just go out on a Wednesday, either because it's beautiful or maybe I had a really stressful day. So that's the mental part. The tactical part is, and so my wife taught me this, which is, why don't you try? She said, Brendan, when you got hired for the role, what was the expectation that you were told? And I said, 45, 50 hours a week on a bad week. And she said, why don't you, for a month, work 45 hours a week? Like, just do it, right? And see if you get any negative feedback. See if your boss gets angry with you. See did you get fired? And so I did it, and I didn't get fired. Nothing bad happened. And in fact, I found that it taught me to be more efficient in my work. So just doing it, just taking that leap and saying, I'm going to do it. Of course, there's always reasons why you can't always adhere to the 45, especially physicians, right? You can't just leave the patient. But I think there's elements there that I think we can all kind of use.
Okay, so mine's a little bit more about joy and integration, work-life integration instead of balance. The statistic Trish was using earlier about the 20% of the work that you do, that's data that shows that burnout is reduced the most when you can do about 20%-ish, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but around there. 20% of your time is spent in the thing that brings you joy, right? Where you feel like, this is my strength. The time goes away and I am in it, right? And then when I've done it, I might be tired, I might be exhausted, but I feel like I've accomplished something and I've done something meaningful. So if you can spend 20% of your time in that, your chances of burning out start to reduce pretty dramatically. So I know that's how I end up doing it, is I find ways, right? My work now is that. It's about 20% of my time is spent doing this fun thing. That is for me the recharge for me, right? It's rewarding. And then the integration part is, fortunately in my role, I can do some of my work when I choose to do it. So if I do a session of 3 hours on a Monday afternoon, for example, and I need an hour to just break, often I can do that in the middle of the day and then come back later. I can do my work at 8 o'clock at night if I want to, if that fits in the way that my life is. So I tend to integrate work into my life and do the things that my job requires of me that way. And then, just because I think this is a funny anecdote, Mark Twain, this is how I approach work. So Mark Twain said, if you have to eat a frog, do it first thing. And if you have to eat 2, eat the big one first.
So we have frogs every night for dinner at my house. Which is
And big ones too.
which actually is a funny thing, because what I was going to say was, I would say that as challenging as a lot of aspects of my job are, I actually do love it. I mean, I'm very passionate about it, and I think this idea of joy in work doesn't mean the work is joyful, but coming away from, like right before I came here, we had a very stressful patient situation, and I feel like I'm good at resolving those things, and so that brings me joy, as stressful as it is. So sometimes people hear about my job and they're like, oh my goodness, like, how can you possibly do that? I was like, I don't know, I like it. I guess I'm weird in some way, but like, I like it. And so like, I would say I'm lucky that more than 20% of my job is the stuff that I'm really passionate about and I love doing. In terms of the balance/integration thing, my wife and I are very committed to our 2 boys. They're school-age kids. They're 11 and 8. We have dinner together as a family virtually every night. And even if that means doing work after the kids go to sleep or whatever else. And that's like a big part of it. Like we cook with the kids, we do activities with them, and even if that means pushing things around in different ways. We get help around certain things, and it's like, okay, like we need help with this stuff from somebody in order to allow us to have dinner with them or to cook with them or do whatever else. And those are things that sort of break. We were talking the other night at dinner. I've done things where like I'll suppress messages between 4 and like 10 p.m. on my phone, so I'm not even distracted by what comes up on the phone. And if it's a real emergency, then people obviously know to text me. But there's this sort of like, the shiny thing of, I have one phone, my wife and I have to text with each other, I want to look up recipes or whatever else it is, and now suddenly this message comes up from somebody, which is not urgent, but the little part of your brain is like, ooh, what's that about? Now you're off on this thing of like, oh my goodness, do I need to write back to them? No, you don't need to write back to them. And like, they wrote to you at 6 o'clock. And so I think that's not only for yourself, but that's also for your team. And it becomes this cycle of, I'm going to demonstrate to you that's okay. And then having teams and being clear that you can delegate in those time-limited manners. So last summer, we took a 10-day trip to California. I turned off my email for 10 days. I let people know, right? My boss was around, my delegates were around, and I turned it off for 10 days. And that was amazing. And it was the first time since my honeymoon I turned off my work email. So, like 12 years or something like that. And so finding ways to do that is both the integration. And the last thing I want to say with the integration is like, some people say like, don't talk about work at home. And my wife's also a pediatrician at CHOP. Like, we talk about it. I mean, we obviously want to use our patient name. Our kids know more about how health systems run and the practice of medicine, but it's fun and it's funny, right? And like, like my son is like, oh my God, Epic is terrible. And like, don't like I would design Epic totally differently, or like, like he knows things about operations management, or they know about like vaccinations. And it just like, it's not trying to separate these two things, right? And that's more energy than just having the fun of like, having them involved in it and asking curious questions or having things that are different. And that's the integration part, as opposed to like, that's work, that's home. So it's a little bit of both in the sense of like turning it off, but also not trying to separate it, because it is something we're passionate about and we love. And like, why not share that love with our kids?
Yeah, and I'll just wrap up and say, I think for me, it's really around leading myself. Making sure that I'm prioritizing work and home environment. Pretty much every Sunday night, I look ahead to see what's going on for the week, what work I need to do, what meetings I need to be in, what can I do in advance to prepare for that, so that the week goes well. And not only the week with work, which is a priority, but the week with my family, which is a priority as well. And I think it's evolved over time. I mean, there was a time when my kids were very young. I was a physician before I had children, and I had to really figure out how to navigate that. I think at times I would be pretty very specific, clear at work, and then leave when I could. But you have to be careful, because you need to establish relationships with people. So it was that balance of getting my work done and prioritizing that and my family, as well as making sure I'm connecting with people at work and organizing. So it has definitely evolved over time. I am somebody who really needs to have some physical activity, and so I find that I need to work that into my work week. When can I exercise? When can I sort of blow off some steam and feel really good? And so it's doing all those things, but I have to say it's evolved over many, many years of adapting to that and adapting to the age of my kids. So this has been really fun, I think, for us. Clearly you're hearing that passion and having an impact is really important, and that's pretty much, I think I heard, drives each one of us in the work that we do. So we hope that you find that passion and impact as well.